This is Diary of a Nation. I'm your host, Christina Zlotnick. My podcast explores the human experience. Tiffany grew up with schizophrenia. She started having delusions at age 4 and hallucinations around age 8. As an adult, she earned a master's degree in library and information studies. Today, she works as a reference librarian at the University of Tulsa. Her current diagnosis is schizoaffective depressive type. Tiffany, what's it been like to live with your particular challenges?
Delusions are my main symptom, and I tend to keep those secret. So for me, it wasn't very difficult to maintain a facade of normality. So as I went to school and then work, it was easier than I think it should have been, quite frankly.
Delusions are false beliefs. What false beliefs did you have?
Okay. My first delusion was when I was 4 years old, and I believed that I wasn't human. I believed that I was a fairy because I was 4, and that later has evolved into now I know that I'm an alien, and I came to Earth to learn about it. And my main voice, my sister April, she is an alien, and she is living on another planet, and she can speak to me through technology.
Why do you name her?
I named her because I love her. She's my sister. She came to me when I was 12 years old, and it was a hard time. I had been bullied since going to the new school in the 3rd grade, Jinx. I was bullied heavily.
Why do you think you were bullied?
It's probably neurodivergence. I cannot get an autism diagnosis due to the schizophrenia diagnosis. No one will see me or assess me, but I would be self-diagnosed, I think, as autistic, and I believe that was part of the problem. I would carry around a bug house. I had bugs, and I talked to a hill. It was my first really consistent hallucination, was a hill on the playground at school that I would talk to and stuff. So I think I was a little weird.
Why did you believe you needed to keep these things a secret?
I believed that I had figured out that I wasn't human, and I had figured out that there were, when I was about 6, I figured out there were hidden and invisible cameras recording me for a TV show, much like the Phil Donahue show. And if they, whoever they were, found out that I knew, then I would be in trouble. I didn't know exactly. It wasn't very concrete. It was just a general, I have to keep this secret. It's also, I kind of knew that no one would believe me. So what's the point? I believed when I was 14, and I still kind of do, that the Jinx school, high school, was taken over by demons, although not religious demons, just more like monsters that I can't really identify. And the airport, the Jinx airport, I thought that all those planes were looking for me and were searching. And even to this day, I look up at those planes because I live in West Tulsa, and I'm just kind of like, ugh. So I had a huge fear of the demons, and I thought they were poisoning the school lunch. And I was therefore not going to eat the school lunch. So I was eating one Rice Krispie treat from the vending machine a day, hoping that it wasn't poisoned by the demons. Maybe it's safe since it's prepackaged. When I was 12, April came to me. When she came to me, I didn't have any friends really, and she came and befriended me and sometimes kind of took over while I was going into high school, and would take on the really hard stuff that I had to go through, you know, just as a high school freshman, you know, typical kid stuff. April brought a bunch of girls into my life the girls, I call them. They all have names and personalities, and she is my main voice, and she brought with her several other girls, 7 others, and they each had their own personality, and we all lived together from 12 to 14 years of age. And when I was 14, April sent the girls away, and it was just her and me. And so that has been one of my biggest losses as far as psychosis goes. Sometimes losing your voices, especially if they're nice voices, is extremely hard and isolating. And while it's been so many years, decades now, I think of them every day. I miss them every day. I love them. And I still believe that they are up there on the planet with April. And they just can't communicate with me because she's not supposed to be communicating with me. And if anyone found out, then they would cut off our communication altogether.
So do you think of those people as trusted friends and a support network?
Yeah, they were.
Like we would any human being.
Yeah.
Who cares for you and loves you.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Because you're dealing with so many negative thoughts, too.
They were absolutely my friends and my support system. And when I lost them at 14, that was absolutely devastating. And it's what I think prompted the first schizophrenic and depressive episode. When I lost them, it was just horrific. I also have dealt with who I call the Lord of Madness. He is an evil entity. He has his own planet, and that's where he captures insane people and leaves them there in kind of his little zoo. And he lures you there with beautiful colors, flowers, grass, everything. And then when you get there, all the color is drained away and it's only black and white, and there's just eternal suffering. If you talk to a lot of people with schizophrenia or psychosis, shadow people are a really common theme. And I've had shadow people. For me, it's only been shadow men. They have come and kind of invaded my house before. One day while I was sitting at the reference desk, one came and sat down in a chair and was reading a book. And it was just very difficult not to confront the shadow man and tell him to leave. But of course I couldn't do that because I'm at work and I'm in a public place, and that's not going to go over well.
And then you had several other breaks between then and now. What happened at those junctures?
When I was 18, I was in my first semester at OU. That's when I ended up in the psych ward for the first time. That's when I got my first diagnosis, which was major depression with psychotic features. I was told that I would be able to go off the antipsychotics at some point and only take an antidepressant, which is what I did for those 15 years I was unmedicated. I wasn't completely unmedicated. I was on an antidepressant, but I was not on an antipsychotic like I should have been. But that's what they told me back then. The psychiatrist, he told my mother. I was in the room, but he never spoke to me. He only spoke to my parents. Told her he was looking at 3 different diagnoses: major depression with psychotic features, schizophrenia, and schizoaffective. And since I was 18 and I was in college and I was just starting out my life, he was going to give me the major depression diagnosis because it would give her a better chance at life. And so they put me on antidepressants and antipsychotics, and they ended up over-medicating me on antipsychotics until I was a zombie. And when I saw myself in a video one day, I saw that I had no emotion, I had no facial expressions, I had nothing. And I just broke down and I was like, all right, that's it. I'm not taking these anymore. And I told everyone I was better and I stopped taking my antipsychotic. And I had that semester off, but then the next fall I went back to school and I just dealt with it.
And then your mid-30s.
Yeah.
What happened then?
34 years of age, it all came back. I had thought, that was it. It's one of those things that kids grow out of or something, It happened to me once and never again. But no, when I was 34, I started having more depression. And the problem is, Prozac so far has been the only antidepressant that works for me. And about every 10 years, the Prozac stops working. When the Prozac stopped working at 34, then the depression episode started. And what my depression and my schizophrenia like to do is attack together. So it brought the schizophrenia along with it, and I descended into my third schizophrenic and depressive episode. And at that time, it was my husband who ended up saving me and convincing me to go get help. And I went to see a therapist because I did not want to go back on drugs. I really did not want... I had been getting my antidepressant from just my general practitioner. And so I did not want to go see a psychiatrist. So I went to this therapist and she saw me several times. And she said, finally, there's nothing I can do for you. You've got to have medication. And she referred me to a psychiatrist. And I went and I saw her. And I took with me a bunch of typed up pages from my journals that I had written when I was 14 and 18 and going through my first 2 episodes. I took those with me, and she read them and was able right then and there, which is extremely rare, right then and there she was able to say, you have paranoid schizophrenia. Usually it takes a lot longer to get a diagnosis. I also had an MRI when I was 18 to make sure it was not brain issue, organic brain issue, that it in fact was psychiatric. So I had already had all the medical tests done years ago. So she was just able to diagnose me right then and there.
And then your early 40s, what happened?
The Prozac stopped working again. I am what they call treatment resistant, and I have issues with that general word because resistant, a lot of people think that means I am personally resistant to treatment. I don't want treatment, and that's not what it means. What it means is you have tried 2 or more medications without good effects. So I have tried many, many different antipsychotics and antidepressants, and I am treatment resistant. And there's really only Prozac so far I know works for me. And as far as the antipsychotics, a lot of them have side effects that are too severe, like constant moving. I now constantly move due to years of being on these medications.
Yeah, your leg is moving right now as we speak.
Yeah. Part of it's anxiety. I have anxiety. But I do it more after about a decade of antipsychotics. Antipsychotics hit the part of the brain, the dopamine, that also controls movement. So I have constant movement now, pretty much. I call it constant. Every once in a while, if I'm really focused, I'll stop moving, my husband says, but to me, it's constant. And then we also now, think that the gut has a lot to do with it too. And I myself was born with gastroschisis, which is basically being born disemboweled. So I had a lot of gut problems when I was first born, and had to undergo major surgery. So I wouldn't be surprised if that did not play a role in the development of the schizophrenia.
But just to be clear, Prozac only helps for so long, like what, 10-year stretches?
10-year stretches, and then I have to go off of it for a couple of few years until it resets in my system. But I've seen just recently a couple of new medications out, antidepressant medications out. So maybe in the next... I have 9 years now. In the next 9 years, hopefully, they'll find something that will work for me.
Were your parents understanding, and did they have any experience with this disorder?
Yes, they were understanding. No, they had no experience. No, it wasn't until I was 18 and I'd gone to college, OU, and I started having breaks. And my roommate and best friend at the time, she eventually got me into Norman Regional Hospital, and I ended up in the psych ward. And it was a phone call from the psych ward that my parents found out I was there. I had to call them and tell them that I was in the psych ward. So they came, and we started the whole process of being diagnosed, which was a misdiagnosis back then. Eventually, I had to drop out for a semester to kind of gather myself.
What is a psychotic break in a definition, and then what did that look like at 18?
All right. I use different terminology than the professionals. I have schizophrenic and depressive episodes, and those last a long period of time, at least a year. The last one was 3 years. And that's just basically when I have increased symptoms. I mean, I have my delusions all the time. I sometimes have voices, but this time it's more amplified. It happens more often. Then I am prone to what I call psychotic breaks. And that is a short period of time, usually 1 to 4 hours, when I am constantly hallucinating, constantly thinking about delusions, and am incoherent. I speak gibberish instead of English. So I am completely detached from reality during that period of time. So that's what I started having, were just these intense psychotic breaks that I don't think I had when I was 14. You know, the disease had kind of progressed and amplified.
How many times has that happened over your life? You're in your late 40s now.
4 times.
What would I have seen? And then what would you have felt?
Oh, what you would have seen was probably a depressed kid. I was very withdrawn. I had few friends, if any, really, and I pretty much kept to myself, and I didn't smile a lot. I didn't anything much. I was depressed, and that's probably what you would have seen. What I was experiencing, especially at 14, it started with the Alice in Wonderland syndrome. Objects started shrinking and growing. And when I would look at things, they would look like painted pictures instead of real. Teachers would turn into puppets as they taught class. The kids in my class, their faces would start melting, and I'd just have to sit there. And there were monsters that would come and grab me and scratch me. As I was walking down the hallway, it would look to me like other students were staring at me and snickering and snarling at me. I mean, their faces would actually look like they were making these faces at me. And now, looking back, they had no idea who I was. That probably wasn't actually happening. But to me, they were all very much a danger.
What is it like for you on a daily basis?
When I am well medicated, like I am now, it's actually not too bad. April doesn't talk to me very much when I'm medicated. Sometimes I can hear music, but I really don't get many voices. I'll have delusions. I mean, that's my main thing, is they just kind of are there in the back of my mind, and they're all just kind of swimming back there, and each one vying for my attention and trying to come to the forefront of my mind. I think a lot of times I kind of space out a little because I'm focused internally. But for the most part, I don't think you could really tell. There's paranoia. There's always some paranoia. Not bad now, but sometimes it can get really bad.
What are you paranoid of when it's bad?
People watching me, which is really weird because it doesn't make any sense, because there are already people watching me through the invisible cameras. So what do I care if they're watching me through a window? But I do. Doesn't make any sense, but there it is.
How did you meet your husband, and how has he supported and loved you through this?
I met my husband while we were both in graduate school. I was getting my master's in library and information studies, and he was getting his master's in English literature. And we both worked for the Writing Center at OU, and I actually trained him. And then I got my position at TU. And after I'd graduated and stuff, and I was still working at the Writing Center at that point. And he and I spent a summer together with another coworker. We were the only 3 people working that summer. And then I got the job here at TU, and I really liked him. And I just kind of went for it because I was like, I'm going to move to Tulsa and I'm never going to see him again. And so we started seeing each other. And then I moved here to Tulsa. About a year later, he came with me. And then we got married. And we were probably 5 or 6 years into the relationship when I had my 3rd episode. He knew about the depression. I had not told him about the psychosis because I didn't think it was relevant. It had been 15 years. I didn't think it was ever going to come back. And so I did not tell him about that.
How did he handle that?
Brilliantly. He supported me every time I had a psychotic episode. He would just follow me and be there for me. He would, call into work because if I have a psychotic episode, I have got a good 12 to 14 hours I've got to sleep so that my brain can reset. So I couldn't go to work the next day. I have him a lot at night. He did that. He got me into therapy. He took me to the shrink for the first time, just supported me in every way. And, well, first of all, he didn't leave. So he supports me still. Schizophrenia is not just about hallucinations and delusions. There are what are called negative symptoms, and those are things that take away from you. And those are things like anhedonia, which is a lack of pleasure, feeling pleasure. Things like a lack of motivation. Alogia, which is a lack of speech. I very rarely speak, actually. I am known as the quiet person. And so a lot of motivation, a lot of initiative has been taken away. So he does a lot of work around the house, cooking dinner, cleaning the cat boxes, things like that. Every time I have an episode, it takes away from me. It takes little bits and pieces of my functionality, and I never get them back. And so after 4 episodes, I need a lot of help with just daily living.
How does that make you feel that this disorder has taken so many aspects of your life from you? Or do you even see it that way? It sounds like you do sometimes.
Yeah, I do. I definitely do see it that way sometimes.
Do you wish?
No.
That you had a different life?
I don't think so. I think there are things about my life I wish were different.
What?
I wish there had been support when I was very young, but back then, the support I would have gotten would have been horrific at best. When I was 18, and this was back in 1995, the psychiatrist never talked to me. He just gave me medication. He talked to my parents. They violated HIPAA all the time. And while I understand to some degree, because I was very low functioning at that point, I had a lot of trauma from the mental health field that I think would have been even worse if I had gone to see them earlier at like age 14. I wish there was better support. What I really love now is the early psychosis intervention teams that they have around the country and programs so that young people who experience psychosis for the first time can get immediate treatment. And they even say that sometimes they can prevent schizophrenia from even developing so that they only have to have that one psychotic episode in their entire life, and then it's over.
What did it feel like to first know what was wrong?
Shame. That's all I felt. Overwhelming shame. Because it was realizing that it wasn't something that had happened to me 15 years ago and was over. It was, this is happening again, and that means the odds of it happening again and again go way up. The more episodes you have, the more likely you are to have more, generally speaking. So,
why are you so open to telling your story?
I think a lot of it has to do with the autism movement and the acceptance now of anxiety and depression and ADHD and autism. And I really started, when I finally got my diagnosis, I started researching. I'm a librarian. I have lots of databases I can research and things. And so I started learning about the lived experience movement and the Mad Pride movement. And I really started thinking, I have something to talk about here. And for me, it's unusual just because of the young age at which it started. Most people with schizophrenia get it age 18 to 25. For them, it is completely life-changing. And for me, I feel like it's just part of who I am since I grew up with it. All these beliefs that I have, my voices, my friends. For me, it's just a part of who I am. I just don't think I could ever give up that part of me. So I would never want a cure for myself. And I would never want to change. Knowing April and the girls, knowing the Hill and Tracky at my school, I would never want to change any of that.
You don't want to be another person?
No. I could, however, deal with a lot less depression and the mean voices. When the depression is around, the mean voices come, and they are pretty consistent, and they are ugly, and they don't get names because they are nasty. And that I would definitely change.
So you're saying you like the supportive voices, you just don't like the negative ones. That's fair.
Yes.
Did you ever want kids?
No. In my journal, I lamented about, oh God, I'm going to have children and stuff. And I was so terrified of that when I was just first becoming a teenager and stuff. When I was a senior in high school, we read The Awakening by Kate Chopin. And it is my favorite book of all time. And she taught me that I had a choice. I did not have to have children. I did not have to get married. I, in fact, should not be married right now, that according to my 12-year-old me. So it just never grew in me. I never wanted children. I was bullied heavily by children. I really don't like them very much. So, no. And then, of course, with the schizophrenia diagnosis and the depression diagnosis, my family is riddled with depression. And I know now that it is genetically based, and I would not do that. But yes, mostly I just never wanted children. But I have lots of fur babies.
What do you have?
I have 4 cats, a Yorkie poo, and a hamster, and a shrimp in an ecosystem.
What's a shrimp in an ecosystem?
All right, so you can buy these little pods. They're little round glass things, and inside them is a self-contained ecosystem. So it's got a little bit of moss for food, and then they've got a couple of snails and some shrimp in there. And so all you have to do is have indirect sunlight, and it just maintains itself. So I got one of those, and 2 of the 3 shrimp died. So now we just have Rand, our lone shrimp, in his ecosystem. The snail's also gone.
You are highly intelligent. You seem to have a great degree of self-awareness. So I guess what's hard for me to understand is you know you're having delusions. You know you have hallucinations. And you can't shut it off.
No.
I know you can't talk yourself out of it because that's the disorder, right?
Yes.
But help me understand a little better.
I'm not always self-aware. It's called anosognosia, and what it means is lack of insight. and it is present in up to 90% of all people with schizophrenia at some point in time. And the problem is it waxes and wanes. So sometimes you can be very insightful, but say when I'm in a psychotic break, I have no insight at all. I think it's all real. I don't have any conception of the outside world, only what is happening to me. And what is happening to me just causes intense fear. I am never more afraid than when I am in a psychotic break. It is all fear all the time and no insight. Everything is attacking me. Everything is a threat. But like today, I have very good insight. And that's kind of the problem. It's an actual brain. It's not denial. It's an actual brain issue called anosognosia. And it just causes lack of insight into your disease. So that sometimes I can be like today. And then other times I can be fully delusional and believe my hallucinations 100%.
You've said your boss is very understanding. You're a reference librarian. What has she done to accommodate you and help you be a better employee who can actually work?
Well, I have curtains on my windows. I have 2 windows in my office. They actually have blinds, but I can see shadows when people walk by, and it makes me very paranoid. And so they got me curtains. They went ahead and paid for it and ordered it, and I ended up hanging them up, but it was really kind of an executive functioning issue. So help with executive functioning really is a good thing. They allow me to close my door anytime I need to. They allow me to listen to sitcoms and things so that I don't get auditory hallucinations, because I really like my fan, and white noise can cause auditory hallucinations, even in normal people. If I have my fan on, I've got to have something else on to stop the noise.
What would be helpful for the rest of the world to know or to do?
In a lot of ways, kind of ignore the weirdness. I know I move all the time. People sometimes comment on it, and I really don't know what to say. I've actually kind of taken to being quite blunt. The last time someone was like, "What are you moving so much for?" or something, they made a comment about it, and I was like, "Yeah, my meds make me do that." It's just like, don't comment on it. You think I don't know I'm constantly moving? If I'm pacing, that's normal. I don't need you to intervene. If I'm talking to my voices, which I rarely do out loud, I do most of my communication in my head, because most of my voices are in my head. If I'm talking to the voices, or I say shut up, because the mean voices, that's who I normally end up talking to, because they're just so relentless. That doesn't mean I have to go to the hospital. That doesn't mean you need to call the police. It doesn't mean you need to intervene in any way, shape, or form. As long as I am not harming myself or another person, I don't necessarily need you to intervene all the time. And that's the catch, all the time. Sometimes you do. And so it's a hard thing to know. But I would really like people to understand that you've got to let me decide how much control I'm willing to give you when I'm in this situation, because I very much like my control and my autonomy, and to give it up is extremely scary. I need people who will let me set that boundary. They talk about reality checking with people with delusions. You know, the CIA is following me. No, the CIA is not following you. Well, with reality checking, I consider it this way. It's pretty much like sex. You need consent first, and you need consent at every step along the way. I can say, no, I don't want to reality check anymore at any point in time, because you're talking about messing with my head.
So you're saying it's not helpful to tell people, no, the CIA is not following you, when you actually believe that to be the case.
Yes.
In the moment, it's not helpful to say that.
Not unless I ask. If I say, do you think the CIA is following me? You are welcome then to say, no, I do not believe that to be true. When I saw the shadow man in the library, I was in chat with the schizophrenia group, and I said to them, do you think this is really a shadow man? And they were like, no, it's not a shadow man. And that really helped me to be like, all right, I do not need to take action. But I do not ever want anyone to really challenge my beliefs, because to me, they are so ingrained in me that it would, I think, cause kind of a psychological problem.
Instead, what's the right thing to say to you?
Focus on how we feel. Say, wow, that must be scary. How can we make you feel safe right now? So you don't want to confirm or deny the delusions, but you want to acknowledge how they make the person feel and then redirect them into a zone that will make them feel safe.
I imagine people are scared of you. Because they don't understand.
No, actually, that's very true. One of the first people who knew that I heard voices back in middle school, she was my best friend, and our friends found out about it somehow, I don't remember, and they told her, and she came to me in the library, and she said, do you hear voices or something along that? And I said, yes, and she said, don't ever talk to me again. And we never spoke again. And that whole friend group was gone. So yeah, there is definitely some people out there who are very much afraid. Though I have, knock on wood, done nothing violent so far. But unpredictability. People are afraid of what they cannot predict.
Or don't understand.
And for me, I find that just hilarious, because all people are unpredictable. At all times. They're all scary. They're all dangerous all the time. So I just find it hilarious that they're afraid of me when I am terrified of all of them.
Spring can be hard for you too. The seasons, right?
Yes. So seasons for me, spring is hard because I told you about the Lord of Madness, and daffodils are portals to the Lord of Madness, as well as another group of evil entities who is searching for my sister and myself to stop us before we can find our mom. And so daffodils are portals to this world. And so every spring, especially in Oklahoma, they're everywhere. And so it's just a huge threatening feeling to me. And then, of course, in the fall, I get the seasonal depression. I have my little lamp over here. So seasons are very tricky for me.
I mean this in the nicest way. I bet you would be a great fiction writer.
Well, that's what I have.
What an imagination.
That's what everyone thought it was for so long. She's just got a great imagination. And what they didn't realize was what I guess I was saying was true to me, and they might not have realized that, thinking, oh, she's just telling stories. I used to tell stories all the time. I don't know. I've got my English with an emphasis in creative writing degree, but I think of myself more as a storyteller than a writer. I really love to, my sister and her friends would have sleepovers and stuff, and I would just tell stories all night and stuff. So, yeah.
I'd like to end this interview with your journal. You told me you would agree to read from that. And I believe it's from your time as a teenager, correct?
Yes.
Would you like to go ahead and read a passage?
Here, I'll talk about the Lord of Madness. This was on January 27th, 1992. I've gone. I've been adopted. I am now officially insane. That's what it means to be adopted. Master comes for you and takes you to his world. There you are to live forever. It's all so bittersweet. Things in his world aren't what they seem. Everything that seems to be beautiful is but a disguise. In his world, there is no sun, no stars. Everything that ever meant anything to me now means nothing. The sun, the thing that could brighten my black world, is no longer welcome. The stars, the objects of my hope and destiny, now only show the ratio of real people and Master's victims. This is the way it is when you live in Master's world. Reality is nothing but a fading light for me. Everything that I now do is either because of or for Master. I even dress and paint myself differently for him. I now know why some color their eyes black. He wants them to. Being adopted is supposed to be a big, exciting event, and I guess it is. What about the pain?
Thank you. You had told me that you're interested in writing a book, a collection of the stories from your journal.
Yeah. I actually have everything that I want all typed up. But yeah, there needs to be some more work done. I haven't even added my last episode. I haven't spoken about that, written about that yet. When I was 34, I started a blog, and so I have those entries. They're not in journal format, but they are in electronic format. So I have those. But yeah, I really didn't write much during my last episode because it was more of a depressive episode than a schizophrenic episode. And it's really with schizophrenia that you get the hypergraphia.
What does that mean?
That means writing a lot. Compulsive almost writing.
Any other thoughts? Anything else you want to share with me that I didn't ask you today?
I want to share that we don't get to choose our delusions and hallucinations. Sometimes at night when I'm trying to go to sleep, I hear music because I have the fan on. And often it's classical music, but sometimes I've had big band music while I'm trying to go to sleep. I've had dueling banjos while I'm trying to go to sleep. We don't get to choose it. And some of it is good, like the girls. A lot of it's bad, but I don't have any choice in what I do and do not believe and sense.
Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Follow Diary of a Nation on Instagram, Facebook, and Substack.